departments here, people representing different departments. I probably need 10 sermons. I've rephrased it in terms of my own theme so that it can make first sense of the promised land. And that means event scenarios, experiences within us as adults. I'm now 56 years old, and my son is 17 years old. But he himself is carrying some of the burdens of the past. So in other words, we are being challenged by so many things in us, around us, in our structures, in our systems. And if that is the case, we have to move beyond principles, because principles, they don't change people. Beginsels verander nie mense nie. Dit hang af in die konteks waarin jy die beginsels plaas. I still remember you, or some of you, invited me to a service, again a uniform service. I think it was 3 years ago in Portable. Who was there? Can you just raise your hand? Sorry, I don't want to. That's right. Someone said, I was there, but not sure. But the question is, what has changed, or what is beginning to change since then? So that's why I'm saying principles, they don't change people. It is really the context within which those principles are actually actualized and embodied. 2 weeks ago, the correctional services invited me to come and speak about spirituality and the reintegrations of offenders in our communities. Under a lot of stress, because I'm going overseas in this week, I could not say no. Because those are the issues that matters to me, that matters to my community. And I told Chaplain Frans, I will do my best to be here today, because this is part of my own calling also. We belong together. And therefore, I have the theme here in front of you. But brothers and sisters, I think the context is also relevant for us here. The effect of the systems and the structures of our communities are immense on our people. And those effects are also immense on our people who are doing different services, who are in uniform. Therefore, thank you for those who organize services like this, so that we can actually come together as a united front. And hopefully the Spirit will give us different scenarios so that we can go back, we become real spiritual activists. Not only within the 16 days, but also beyond the 16 days. Now, I also have this image, and while I was driving here, I thought it would be nice that people coming from, at least from the different services, they take a tour to New York. And some of you know the history of what happened there, when the two towers were actually, a plane flew into the two towers. That is the image that I want you to keep today. 2 years ago, I had an image in Portable about an accident and who responded, people from different departments. Now, 18 years later, since 9 September 21, if you go and read the literature, all the people from the different services who responded to that big incident are still affected 18 years later. From the police, from the nurses, from the volunteers, everyone. So the things, they sit with us, they embody in us, they traumatize us. So we are a community who are traumatized. And I'm sure you know colleagues who are traumatized. Maybe yourself are traumatized. So in other words, when we have a service like this, we really begin to reflect, oh God, how have all these different incidents, natural disasters, affected us and also affected those people who are in uniform, those brothers and sisters. So therefore, I was really thinking this morning, it would be very interesting in future that some of you and some of us go and spend some time and speak to the people who were actually involved in those kind of services and how they responded and so. Now, brothers and sisters, in the text that we've read this morning, and the challenges as I pick it up as part of our communities, whether it's in the churches, whether it's the denominations, whether it's the workplace, this issue of division is really a force and a power that eats us and it destroys us. And therefore, the text that we have in front of us from Nehemiah, it's also Nehemiah himself also returned to the promised land, and he brought somehow the third person to come back with a group of people. By then, the temple was already built. In other words, the spiritual building was already there. How many of us today in South Africa, because of all the consequences and the effects of the past, we draw to the temple only? Congregations, denominations, gemeentes, bedieninge het in beginne kyk. Because what they do, post-1994, the temple is at the center, the spiritual house is at the center. Forgetting that the wall is half built. And other people go to the temple, satisfied, indulge themselves in spirituality, and they build bigger walls outside for their own safety. Now you must ask, how do we shift these people? How do you mobilize them? I don't know. I don't have the answers. The only thing that we have in front of us, at least at this space of grace, is to have the text to help us to have scenarios that will help us to move forward and so. And therefore, Nehemiah suddenly realized, no. We cannot only have the spirituality. We need to rebuild the walls. But the challenge is, how do you mobilize and move those people who are only concerned about their own safety? And how do you move those people in the churches who are actually also saying, no, the temple is the fireplace, we are okay here. So that is the challenge that Nehemiah had, and this is our challenge for the past couple of years. And what do we do? What do we expect? And that is good. Ons verwag nou op 'n manier dat die springbokke weer vir ons kan terugbring tot ons sinne. Is so, né? It's happy those kind of moments. And remember the text that I read 3 years ago in Portugal? It was about the transforming of the mind. And you see also this morning I brought in again, in a different way, Romans 13, which is a very challenging text. It's a difficult text in sense of obeying the authorities. How do you obey the authorities when, I don't want to generalize, corruption seems to be at different levels? Then I tend this morning to say, this is a difficult text for me. I want not to agree with Paul. But at the same time, I know you in the uniforms, you represent me there. And you represent God. And you are in a position of power. But it's an enabling power that empowers even those who are vulnerable. That gives me hope. And that is why I'm glad I am here. So therefore, I wrestle between these two texts. But let me focus on the first one. Because the powers and the forces are within us, are around us. But some of those powers, they are also negative. Ons has negatiewe kragte en magte. En daai kragte en daai magte kry 'n mens ook in hierdie teks. terwyl die geestelike mense terug is en die tempel is gebou, en die muur is half gebou, en hulle wil verder bou, is daar net 'n klomp mense wat negatief is. Die taal wat hulle gebruik, die woorde wat hulle gebruik, is totaal negatief. Die vrae wat hulle vra, is vrae wat afbreekend is. The questions that they pose are questions that are destructive. They actually try everything to discourage these people. They blame them. They shame them. Whatever you do is not going to work, is so weak. Even if an animal jumps on it, it's going to fall down. Now just imagine, you rebuild the house spiritually. You work together in different spheres, in the congregations, in the workplaces, in the different departments, and you hear this negative voice. You can feel powerless. It's human to want to give up. In fact, the negative forces, or those who represent those forces, went even so far that they actually want to kill them. They plot to kill the builders. Those are the negative forces. We take note of them, but on the other side, when people work together, there's also the power of rebuilding together. That can unite us, and when we are united, more people will feel protected. Sometimes people do not work together in South Africa. One of the reasons is they feel so vulnerable. They feel as if there's nothing else that they can do. And that's why the team is so important. Now, where is this positive force? Where is this power from the perspective of the text? As I said earlier, principles do not build and form people. There must be another source. And you know better, people come from different religious communities. Some people are not people who believe, but they are people with values. So it means there's even power in them that needs to be untapped so that it can help us, so that we build together. Now, Nehemiah, this leader in uniform, was mobilizing a group of people who are fearful, some of them somehow hopeless, but then he touches on a very important source. And therefore, the first one was prayer. The spiritual practice. Now ask yourself, I'm sometimes more familiar with the chaplains, I know the others also, and I've also been in uniform to open up spaces for spiritual practices in a very complex system like a state or the government, and they also. And I'm sure you also have your own tensions around it like that also. But that is part of building together. And in this case, you can see it is not just about kupela principle first, but it's also a spiritual practice. And when I talk about spiritual practice, I don't talk about a religion, or I don't talk about an institution. I really talk about people, spiritual people, who can embody these practices so that it can be changed. And those people are in this congregation, and they are in different congregations. They are in the workplaces. So that is the first power within building together. You can read it, chapter 4, verse 9. But it's not just about practicing prayer. It must be part of who you are, your identity. And that is why we are here this morning. Therefore, they say they work with all that was or is in them. So it comes from the heart also. It comes from deep in it. That is also part of this power and this force. And therefore, when Paul says in Romans 12, my beloved text, the transformation of the mind is the will, is the heart, it's everything. But despite that, ten spyte van dit, dat mense bid, dat hulle hard werk en gee alles, nogtans het die bedreiging ook meer en meer en meer geword. Ook die mense wat na in die vuur was, those who were close to the challenges, they are trying to rebuild this half-walled South Africa, but on the other side, it seems as if the negative forces are increasing. So hulle bid, hulle hart is in dit, maar het voel asof dit nutteloos is, asof hulle nog steeds stroom opswem. It feels as if it's futile and they're still somehow swimming against the stream. Voel u so vanoggend? We recognize that. But there's a twist in the text, a turning point that I like very much. It is the mind. We talk about prayer, we talk about heart, we talk about the mind. When they remembered the greatness of the Lord, when they remembered how awesome the Lord has been, then they know they are not going to stop. They're going to build that wall until they finish it. When they remembered the greater awesomeness of the Lord, they said, we are not going to only sit in the congregation around the fire. Now, correctional services have been trying their best to call congregations to be part of the reintegration of our brothers and sisters so that the walls can be filled. But yet, there's no movement. I don't know what the cause is because there's no movement, but it would be very interesting to sit down and see what we can do. Because you cannot work from above. Then people don't move. But what I've learned and heard 2 weeks ago, there's a new kind of prayer from the chaplains and others, from the heart, and say, let's see again what we can do. Maybe let's call it part of the new dawn. But what is part of a new dawn without the spirituality that most and other people are actually embodying? So, can you see that power? When the faithful in uniform and others remember the greatness of the Lord despite the past, the Spirit of God is working, even minimizing or destroying those negative powers. Because the text said, because of that later on, those who were negatives realized, you can't touch those people of God who is building the wall. You can now see, brothers, and especially those in uniform, what I try, at least in this minimum time, to illustrate that the principles and the values and the missions, whatever we call them, needs to be contextualized, in our case, in a spiritual base, and whatever that is. How it's going to work, how it's going to be effective, I can't tell it from the pulpit. But when people come together, they can discern what will work for them and why it will work. And therefore, as I said, verse 15 is important, but also that verse 18 and so. Now, there are different workers with different sources and resources, with different powers in them. And in that last couple of verses from Nehemiah is actually now mentioning them. And it's very interesting. He says, as a leader, remember I said for me, leader is also a value thing. You do not have to be a religious person like me. You can have your values. So I use spiritual broader than church, broader than organization. But what this strategic leader is saying, you know what? I want to lead these people rebuilding this world spiritually. But there's one person that I want to be close to me and next to me. And it's that person who's going to blow the horn. Who's going to call the spiritual person? Die ene wat die ramshoring gaan blaas. Hy moet hier langs my staan. Who is blowing the horn for you, the spiritual horn for you as a worker and uniform? Or if you blow it, for whom are you blowing it? So it's a very beautiful image that you can see how the spiritual, the social, the communal one, they actually need to function together so that the power of rebuilding can unite and at the same time it can protect. We need both of that. I can't go into detail here, but I see all these different scenarios. There's very interesting symbols. Even those who are guarding, they do their work. Now just apply that to the police or the police forums, or you apply to the neighbor watches. What does that mean for us here? Because it's not principles, it's not just strategic. We have to get values in them if we read text like that. While they may be sitting and they do all their work, they try to protect us and they guard everything around us. Where are we? We are sleeping. The only, and I know the area where I stay, there are a lot of people who do not sleep while I sleep, and they protect me. They say, we are on the wall. We're going to guard you. But you at least, you must be the eyes also, and the hands as far as possible. Because those counter forces, people, for example, who are involved or about to commit criminal offenses, they are very clever. They see with their eyes, they work out everything. How can we expect the police and the protect service to do everything for us? Sometimes you step forward, you don't have to do anything. What you say, I am here. Then somebody else see that you see him or her, then you reduce crime and etc. So there is a method in the madness. The only difference, we don't come together and work together. This has been proven in research. People have tested that. Just blow that horn, the spiritual horn, the protector horn, and step out, and you'll see. This is how we can begin to be a counter-spiritual force. Nie 'n strategiese ene. Die strategiese beplanning, dis vir die bestuurders. I'm talking here about a spiritual force that can change things around us. And therefore, it is up to us. Ask yourself now, where do you blow the horn? Think of the 16 days of activism against the abuse of women and children. We can't expect the president to do everything for us. And just see, look at your neighborhood. Just think how you think about neighborhood watches. I probably will start there before I can say what we should do. Because we can plan whatever we want to do. But if people don't feel they have the power in them to do it, then they won't move. So therefore, we first have to open that up in our community and so. So brothers and sisters, I want to conclude. You can see the different scenarios. You can see the different beautiful images. There's protection, 50% protects. The other 50%, they work, they are the builders. That's what you get there. But also you get, even those who carry material around, they are also responsible as far as their protection is concerned, and also the protection of others. And I like that group, the builders. With one hand you build, with the other one you have to look after your own safety and also the safety of others. So that is the kind of spiritual empowerment that I talk about. It's not out there, it's concrete, and you can feel it in this text, and it's important. So what we could say, one builder, one God. One God, one builder. That is that unity that you find in this text and so. So brothers and sisters, if I'm about to conclude, so therefore from my side, I would say, keep on your uniform, day and night, irrespectively of the department. These brothers and these sisters say, we will pray for you, and I will pray for you. Keep on your uniform. And even in this place, even when they went to sleep, they kept on their uniform. It means not just physical uniform, but in their thinking, in their remembrance, in their prayer, they kept it on. Stay and support each other. May the good Lord bless you, even during this critical time. As I said, go back, and that verse 4, chapter 15 and 18 is a call to step forward, working together, so that through that we can be empowered. But in that process, there is also the someone who blows the spiritual trumpet. Mag die Here vir julle sien. Ek wou Thixo aan die sigelele.